hearts is freshly tilled, ready to receive your word and to receive what you would have for us, that what we might bring forth be of you, because whatever is planted is that which will come forth in our lives, that we can spread that seed then unto the world as we go out into it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, we are getting close. Last verse and a half, right? We're on 32. So let's review the first half of 32 again. We'll read the whole thing. So if thou hast done foolishly in lifting up thyself, or if thou hast thought evil, lay thine hand upon thy mouth. So like we said, that speaks volumes right there up front. So thou hast done foolishly is nabal, meaning to wilt, or to fall away, to fail, to faint, to be foolish or morally wicked. And in lifting up thyself is nasa, meaning to lift, accept, advance, arise, to lift yourself up, exalt yourself. So exalting yourself up above everything else is foolish. We all know we shouldn't be doing that. There's only one that we should be exalting and glorifying, and that is the Lord. Now, the second half of this, it gives a similar thought, but a little bit different. Or if thou hast thought evil, lay thine hand over thy mouth. So, if thou hast thought evil, that cluster of words there is zamam, meaning to plan, usually in a bad sense, consider, devise, or imagine, plot or purpose to think evil. So that makes sense. So it's not just thinking evil, but it's thinking about committing evil acts. Because usually what we allow to come in here ends up coming out in the way we walk, right? So that's why we have to be good air traffic controllers, controlling the thoughts that come in here so that we don't walk out the wrong thing here. So if we put on the mind of Christ like we're supposed to, then what are we going to walk out? Christ, exactly. Good in, good out. Bad in, bad out. Yep, we got to put on that filter of the mind of Christ. So if thou hast thought evil, lay thine hand upon thy mouth. So if you do let one of those thoughts come in, lay thine hand, yod, meaning a hand. The open one, indicating power, means, or direction, charge, consecrate, fellowship, force, means, ministry. The same word that was used to describe the spider's hand in 28. So if you have that evil thought come in and it wants to land, you use the hand of power. And I thought the best fitting meaning of that is to consecrate. So use that hand of power, seal it, get rid of it. Don't let that come out. We all have thoughts come in. Do we entertain them? We can get rid of those thoughts. Remember, it's your airport. You can either let that plane come in and say, nope, gotta go. No refuel, just get out. Just go. Yep. You have that hand of power, that hand of direction over your mind. What you allow to come in is in your hands. Yep, exactly. You can minister to yourself and say, does that thought line up with what I've been reading? Does that thought line up with what I've been taught? Maybe we should use the balance of the word and see if this is actually something I should be thinking and something that I should walk out. Because not everything that comes in our minds will immediately be like, oh, I should go kill this person. No, that's a bad idea. Let's not do that. Some things might sound like a really good idea. Hold on a second. Let's take a look at this. Let's use a little discernment. Should I do this? Pray about it. Use the hand. See if that's something you should be doing. Upon thy mouth. Yeah, bring every thought into captivity. The hand of power. And put it upon your mouth. Brother Tim.
Just a side note. I don't even like. Just a side note. Think about this. Just think about it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
See, and this is where what happens with people, they start condemning themselves because a thought comes. No. There's not where it is. What happens is these thoughts are constantly,
Yep.
you said what needs to be done. You're the air traffic controller. You allow what you feed on and what you don't feed on. So you can't beat yourself up because a thought comes.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you do with it.
Exactly.
We had a prophet come through years ago, and he said, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop them from making a nest in your hair.
That's a very good point. So do you allow that bird or that plane to come down and nest and unload its junk? And accept it and live with it, roll with it? Or do you say, nope, not supposed to be in my life? I want better thoughts. And then the more you do that, then it just becomes reaction to get rid of those other thoughts. It becomes a habit. And we learned about the habits earlier on, where there can be bad habits, like the ones that are trying to be portrayed out in the world through repetition. Or we could use repetition to give us good habits, to continue hearing the word. Because once you are attuned to that still small voice, then you can block out the other ones. Even if they're loud, you still hear that still small voice through all the clutter. Now, upon thy mouth is peh, meaning the mouth, as a means of blowing. Whether literally or figuratively, it particularly means speech or mind. Your mouth, your sentence, the sound, two-edged, wish or word. Our two-edged sword that every one of us carries around. All right? So we want to take our hand, put it over our mouth so that the thought that comes in, we take it under control before it comes out and cuts. Because we want to use the other edge of the sword, the one that gives life. We don't want to let the thoughts that are going to impart death upon each other or ourselves make its way out. And it's the same word used in verse 20 when the adulterous woman wipes her mouth. I had a note in here that brought me back to 2 Corinthians 10. And it says in verses 3 through 5, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, every high thing that exalts itself above the knowledge of God, and bringeth into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. So back here in Proverbs, in this prophecy, it was telling us to do exactly that. To bring into captivity every thought that comes into here. And if anything comes into there, we grab it, we stop it from coming out, we get rid of it. Because we want to impart life and not death. Go ahead, Pastor.
What we don't realize as believers, the minute it comes out of our mouth, it becomes creative.
Mm-hmm.
It begins to create an atmosphere. It begins to create the power of God that is within us is how we use it. And we got to be careful, because what comes out of our mouth can be life or death.
That is a fact. And we've had preachers come in here and teach us exactly what sound does. Once something is uttered, like the words that I'm speaking right now, it creates a sound wave. That sound wave then goes off and hits the walls. The walls reverberate that sound wave, and the sound never really dies. It is imprinted in everything that it touches. So when that word comes out of your mouth, it is now imprinted in everything that hears it. So you need to take under control and speak out life. Because if you speak out life, you imprint life into everything you come across, what is going to be born forth from that? Life. But if you speak death, what will be born from that? So we need to keep under control and bring every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. The last verse. Proverbs 30, verse 33. Let's read the whole thing. Surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, and the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood, so the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. Okay, so now we know how to make butter. Churn the butter. Wring your nose, you will bring forth blood, and forcing of wrath bring forth strife. So on the surface, it looks like, how do you make butter? You beat it up. You put it in this big thing with a pole, and you just start smashing it, right? It's a violent process. The wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. So I grab pastor's nose and I start doing this to it. It's probably going to start bleeding. He's probably not going to be very happy with me either. So the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. There's a lot of force involved in this. So let's break down these words a little bit and see what they mean. So the churning. Churning is meats, which means pressure, churning, force, or wringing, and is derived from mutz, meaning to press. That is figuratively to oppress, or the extortioner. Interesting. And milk is kalab, meaning milk, of course, as the richness of kine, which is plural for cows, cheese, milk, or suckling. But is the real heart of it is the derivative is kaleb, meaning to be fat. Fat, whether literally or figuratively, hence the richest or choice part, the finest, the grease, the marrow. And butter, and then we'll bring all these together. Butter is kahema, meaning curdled milk or cheese. This is the one I was really talking about. This one is derived from koma, meaning to join, a wall of protection. So the churning of milk bringeth forth butter. So the pressure, force, or wringing on milk transforms the richness or kind, as Brother Bo was saying, it brings forth a transformative process from milk, or the richest part, into butter, which is curdled milk or cheese, which also means a wall of protection. That's an interesting look at milk and butter. So let's see how that relates to the other two parts of this passage. And then the wringing of the nose. The wringing is the exact same word as churning. Pressure, churning, force, wringing, from mutz, the extortioner. So the wringing of the nose, which is off, the nose or nostril, hence the face, and occasionally a person itself. Also from the rapid breathing in passion, ire, anger, or wrath. That was all from nose. It bringeth forth blood, which is dam, meaning blood, as that which is shed and causes death of a man or animal. By analogy, the juice of the grape. Figuratively, bloodshed, drops of blood, bloodiness or guiltiness. So the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. The one that really speaks to me and nose is, it really pertains to ire, anger, passion. So when you wring someone's nose, you grab and you put pressure on their anger, you're going to bring forth blood. Life or death. And when you put pressure on someone's anger, you're probably not going to bring forth life. You're going to bring forth that which is not good. Right? So I think that's one of the reasons why it says, do not drive your children to wrath. You're not going to bring out the best in them when you do that. So the wringing of the nose putting pressure on someone's anger, even if they're not angry, but you know how to push their buttons. And I'm guilty of this every now and then. When you put pressure on their buttons, knowing it's going to push them to wrath, you're not going to bring out the best in that person. So let's see if that relates to the last one. I bet you it does. So the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. So, funny thing, forcing is the exact same word as wringing and churning. So we already know what that one. Another funny thing is, wrath is the exact same thing as nose. And strife is the one that's a little bit different here. Strife is reb, meaning a contest, personal or legal. An adversary. Cause, chiding, contend. Controversy, pleading strife, is derived from reb, meaning to toss, that is to grapple. Mostly in a figurative sense, to wrangle or hold a controversy, to defend or rebuke. So when you force someone's wrath, do you bring out the best of them and now have an ally in what you're looking for? Or do you make that person more contentious towards you? If you're looking to make the person an ally, it's probably not a good idea to push their buttons and bring forth wrath, especially when someone's already angry. There's a few proverbs that relate to this, but we'll just talk about it right now. You can get into a lot of trouble pushing people's wrath. A soft word calms angry people, it turns away wrath. And by saying that, that's really what we should be doing. We should be turning away wrath. All right? So we want to create allies as opposed to adversaries. And I think that's what this portion of verse is really telling us. We really need to be allies with each other, not push each other's buttons. We want to bring out the best in each other. And pushing each other's buttons or pushing people when they're already angry is not the best way to do that. You're only going to bring out the worst in them. And you're also going to create an enemy, which is what the word strife here means. It means both in a physical and a legal sense. Just in dealing with people out in the world, you're going to push people's strife or anger, you're probably going to end up in a situation where you don't really want to be. In the church spiritually, you want to help each other. You want to calm anger so that you can look at it objectively from the mind of Christ. Because usually when we let our emotions get the better of us, and there's a reason they use that terminology, the emotions get the better of us. We don't think clearly when we're led by emotion. Emotions are good things. They're given to us for a reason. But when we let them control us, we usually don't get the right outcome. So what this is telling us is that when we see that, or when we're going through that ourselves, we shouldn't heap coals on that. We should help to be the harp player that calms down the anger. Because we want to make sure that we're portraying the mind of Christ and not the anger that comes from here. A lot of us, and I'm one of them, when we're on the road, I had like 4 of them today on the way to church. Oh my God, road rage. Just want to be like, get on the road! What are you doing? What's wrong with you people? It's been crazy the last 3 days driving. Oh my God, yes, and we were there on the opening day, yes. Got this big cart trying to drive around. Get out of here, no way. But that doesn't portray what we want to portray, right? So, ever since I started reading this, I'm like, guess what I'm going to get tested on? So, it happens every time, without fail. So we're driving, and this guy comes flying in, cuts us off, all sorts of crazy. Someone slams our door, and how do we handle those situations? Do we put pressure on it? And this word pressure, I was going to get into this later, but it fits into this story. The word pressure also means to brood. So it doesn't only apply to each other in how we interact, like if Chris was ticked and I started poking his buttons, that doesn't help. But it also means brooding ourselves on our own anger, because we can be our own worst enemies, right? Yeah. So when something happens, what do we dwell on? Do we dwell on the situation? Do we dwell on the fact that we're angry and we might have been wronged? Or do we let it go and let God? Because that's what we should be doing. We should be letting go and say, it's in your hands, Lord. I'm just going to let it go, forgive, because as soon as I don't forgive and I hold on to that, then the root of bitterness can take over. Even with the small things, like I said, habits. Yeah. So if we get into the habit of hanging on to those kind of things, it makes it much easier for us to get bitter about larger things. But if we're in the habit of letting go of all the small things, then we can let go of all those things and let God. Yep. Small practices. Yep, exactly. If we can get out of our own way, we can let God, then we'll be in much better shape. Does anyone have anything on that verse? Because, go ahead, Pastor. I think that was all that I had on that one.
As I was looking at these two and listening, I think the last verse is tied into the verse before that. And I think the real key is in the statement, if thou hast done foolishly in lifting thyself up. And when we do that, all the rest of this stuff begins to be a problem in our lives. It's this self-elevation. It's this this whole idea, picture over and over and over again is, we've looked at the different proverbs. Like he said, if you go into a room, don't go right up to the front and take the front seat. Take it back and then be invited up. And all kinds of principles of being lowly. He was always talked about being lowly. Always think of the other person above yourself. Those are very difficult things to do in our life because we're always on the self-defense. And one of the things we got to understand, don't lift yourself up. Don't try self-promotion, because sooner or later it's going to all collapse. And you're going to find all these other things beginning to be problems in your life.
We saw as the generation that lifts themselves up, they build their foundation on the sand, and it's going to fall. So if you lift yourself up like that generation we were warned about earlier, it's just going to fall down around us. It's not going to be good. But if we put others ahead of ourselves, love your neighbor as yourself, and we build upon the rock, then we won't have that issue. And that was the conclusion of 33. Does anyone want to go through a quick summary to try to pull all this together?
Sure.
All right. So we'll just quickly go through this. I might throw a couple questions out there, you guys. Elders are not allowed to answer. And see what we remember. So, summary, the words of Agur, the son of Yekah, even the prophecy the man spoke unto Ithil, even unto Ithil and Ukal. Remember who Agur is? Who's Agur? What does his name mean? He's the gatherer. He's the one who gathers together all this wisdom. And he's the son of Yekah, the obedient. So if Agur is Solomon, Yekah is probably David. That's right. And Ithil and Ulcal. Ithil meaning God has arrived. and ukal meaning devoured or consumed. Now, what does this tell us when we break down their names? This was the portion, the very first time we looked at this, it was the messianic illusion. It was alluding to the coming of Christ so that he can be consumed. God has arrived to be consumed. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of man. I neither learn wisdom nor have the knowledge of the holy. Who hath ascended up into heaven or descended? Who hath gathered the winds in their fist? Who hath bound the waters in their garment? And who hath established the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell me? Remember, Job was scolded by his friend and by God in the very same manner. So here, Agor, or Solomon, he did it to himself. He's like, I know. I do not know any of these things. The only thing that I know is that which God has revealed to me. Because he has no power of understanding to know any of these things except through the revelation through the Spirit. Because every word of God is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and you be found a liar. So, do we remember what add unto his words mean? Anyone? The hand? Something? Oh, come on. Add unto his words. What do we mean by add unto his words?
Put in what's not there. Read into it more.
Exactly. Read into it what is not there. Or add unto it for your own benefit. Make it say what you want to say. A lot of people call it cherry picking. Ooh, that verse sounds nice. But the following three that put it in context, I like this one. So we need to not add unto his words or take them in our own context so they say what we want them to say. So 2 things I have required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty or riches. Feed me with food that is convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee, and say, who's the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of God in vain. So we talked about this portion of verse 8 a few times throughout this. Feed me with food that is convenient for me. Now, remember what that breaks down into. The food or the situations that are convenient for me. So the Lord will feed us or prune us or groom us or put us into the different situations and circumstances that we need in order to grow to be that which he needs us to be to fulfill his purpose, because that's ultimately what we're here for. So that convenient food is the situations and circumstances that you find yourself in on a daily basis. All those things are grooming you to be who you need to be. It was funny, we got this book for the kids, and it was, what do you do with a problem? And it goes through this little description of, oh my God, I have this problem. What is this? It doesn't really describe the problem, it just says problem. And the person worries about this problem. What do I do with this? How do I get rid of it? The more they worry, the bigger this problem gets. Until that kid finally figures out, that's enough. I'm sick of worrying about this problem. I need to face it. So he buckles down and he tackles his problem. And what does he find out? There's actually something beautiful inside that problem. What's inside that problem? An opportunity. An opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to do something that gets you outside of your comfort zone and makes you grow. That's exactly what he gives us. That is the food that he feeds us with. He gives us those opportunities to grow. Every situation and circumstance we find ourselves in is an opportunity for us to grow. Paul knew that very well. I've said this a couple times. He found himself in the jail. Well, that's a pretty junky opportunity. What in the world can I find in this? Well, Paul said, let's praise him. All right. So they start praising. And look at the opportunities that arose out of being thrown in jail. Every problem is an opportunity. If we start looking at the problems or the issues in our lives as opportunities for us to grow, to overcome, to be overcomers, which is what we're called to be, then they are no longer problems. They're nothing but opportunities for us to grow into what God wants us to be. Excuse me. So, accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee, and thou be found guilty. So that speaks of us. Let's not accuse one another unto our master, lest we be found guilty, and that servant then curse us. We should be a helpful hand to one another. You need something you need help with, you need to understand something, you just need a listening ear. Let's be that. Let's not gossip unto one another or unto the Lord, complaining about things. If you're going to talk to the Lord about someone, talk to the Lord and say, Lord, what can I do to help? Do I just pray? That might be the answer. Just pray. And maybe in that prayer, you'll be revealed as to what you need to do to help. Or maybe it's nothing. Maybe they just need to work through something because they have that opportunity to learn and grow. Which is sometimes the hardest thing to do, nothing. It's usually easier to do and do and do and do and just do. Sometimes the hardest thing is to just wait. What do we do when we wait? We'll talk about this again because we're going to do a review. But when we're waiting, we should pop open that book, start feeding ourselves. We should prepare for when the time comes that we do need to do something. Yeah. Let's armor ourselves. Armor doesn't just appear. We need to armor ourselves by reading the book, getting into it, studying, doing a lot of silah, meditating on the word, because that's where you get a lot of your insight into things. It's just thinking about it. Excuse me. There is a generation that curseth their father and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords and jaw teeth as knives to devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men.
Sounds like the riots in the streets.
Yeah. Remember, this is a prophecy. It's said right in the first verse. The words of Agur, the son of Yeka. Even the prophecy the man said unto Ithil, even unto Ithil and Ukal. It's a prophecy. I think we can see some of the results of that prophecy now coming to light. There's a generation that curseth their father. Father speaks of physical fathers. It also speaks of pastors. Authority, any type of authority. There's a generation both out there and in the church that will not bless their father, and that curseth their mother. And the mother in all this speaks a lot of direction. Mothers are the ones that usually teach quite a bit, right? And the mothers in the church tend to be the elders. There's a generation that will curse the instruction of the elders of the church, though they're trying to teach them out of wisdom and understanding, out of the knowledge that comes through years of experience. They curse that, thinking, I know better, because their eyes are lofty. They have lifted themselves up. But they didn't have the whereabouts to take that hand of power and put it over their mouths and take that under control and listen to the teachings in the book that say that they should come under submission and learn. Exactly. They curse the church as their eyelids are lifted up. Let's go on to the next section here. The horse leaf has 2 daughters crying, give, give. There are 3 things that are never satisfied, yea, 4 things that say it's not enough. Remember the horse leech and the 2 sucking ends of the leech. There's two portions. The grave and the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not, it is enough. Death will never be satisfied. It runs counter to the purpose of God, which is life. Death will always take more. It's never satisfied. Barren womb means to constrain tender love when you break it down, and it's derived from vine dresser. We can't constrain the vine dresser in our lives, which is the Spirit. Don't want to do that, because then he can't prune us. And sometimes a vine dresser needs to restrain a branch. Ever seen those little bonsai trees? The professionals will take little pieces of string and push them back. Ooh, that's uncomfortable. I don't like that, but it's with a purpose. It might be put under a little pressure to get you to grow into the right shape that you need to be in order to do what you need to do. And we only have a few minutes left, so. And the fire relates to the grave, never satisfied. And the barren womb, and the desert, no matter how much water you pour into it, won't produce life. Its goal is to produce life, but being barren, it cannot. The eye that mocketh his father and despiseth to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. That really quickly broke down to the eye that mocketh his father and despiseth to obey his mother, which we talked about earlier, virtually means the same thing. The ravens of the valley shall pick it out. The spirits of principalities and the powers of the air will take that inheritance away, and it'll be consumed by the young eagles, which speaks of the next generation. So if we don't listen to the instructions of our father and the teachings of our mother, then that which was supposed to be our inheritance will be given to the younger generation to fulfill that which we refuse to. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. The way of the eagle in the air, the serpent on the rock, the way of the ship in the midst of the sea, and of a man with a maid. Eagle in the air speaks of how the Spirit lifts us up. He has no idea how it happens, but it happens. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon us, and we are lifted up with wings as eagles. The serpent on the rock, the serpent tries to strike the rock of the Lord, like we saw when we looked into the serpent testing Jesus, but made no mark. Ship in the midst of the sea, we talked quite extensively on that one. And the way of the man with a maid, or another translation, the way of a man in the maid. It was too wonderful for him to comprehend how the Spirit of the Lord, that mighty, courageous man, would be put into the womb of a virgin, which is what that maid means. It's another allusion to Christ. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth and saith, I have done no wickedness. So that word turneth is, or adulteress is to turn away from the teachings. And turns away from the church and goes out and consumes that of which should not be consumed, partakes of the world, and comes back, wipes away any trace of it, cleanses the mouth or that which is spoken, and says, I have done no wrong. For 3 things the earth is disquieted, and 4 of which it cannot bear. Servant when he reigneth, a fool when he is filled with meat, an odious woman when she is married, and a handmaid that is heir to her mistress. Servant when he reigneth, not equipped to reign, doesn't have that mindset. Fool when he is filled with meat. When you give a fool everything that they need or everything that they could ever want, they become emboldened, and their foolishness extends. An odious woman when she is married, it means odious person, really, because woman is in italicized. The odious when they are married, which means to be hateful and contentious. and a handmaid that is heir to her mistress, which we looked at the story of Hagar. When she realized she was with child, she hated her mistress because she now had the inheritance, and she thought herself to be better and more worthy. There be 4 things that are little upon the earth, but are exceedingly wise. The ants, not a strong people, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. Conies are but a feeble folk, yet they make their house in the rocks. And the locusts that have no king, yet they go forth all of them by bands. All of these things portray a certain aspect of wisdom that we can apply to our Christian walks. Ants, though they're not strong, they prepare ahead of time. Remember, we saw that the word summer meant the time where there's no rain, where it's quiet, everything is calm. That is when you prepare, like an army prepares well before the battle. The conies make their house in the rocks. They're weak, but they know where their strength stands, in the rock. The locusts that have no king, that they go forth all of them by bands. They know where their instruction comes for, because they all have the same DNA, the same mind of Christ, if we're talking about the church. And there are 3 things that go well, which 4 are comely and going. The lion, which is strongest among beasts, and turning not away from any, which speaks of Christ, how he never turned away. He's the Lion of Judah. They all these things, they portray stateliness. They portray that which a king, a ruler should portray. Authority without having to be authoritative and tell people what to do. Their presence is the actual representation of the authority that they have. The greyhound, or the warhorse, the he-goat that walks ahead of the flock, looks out for danger and leads in the correct path. And a king against whom there is no rising up. A king who has the hands, the hearts, the minds of his people with him. There's no rising up against that. There is no defeating it. Yep, king of righteousness. And if thou hast done foolishly, lifting up thyself, or if thou hast thought any evil, lay thy hand upon thy mouth, as we discovered today. Because surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, and the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. So forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. When we lift ourselves up above our brethren, it forces wrath. Because usually when you lift yourself up, you have to do it on the backs of others. So let us not do that. And that concludes 33. I implore all of you to look into this, because I only brought out little nuggets that spoke to me. There's more. So keep digging. There's more in all these verses. We should all be looking into them in even greater detail. Amen. That is all.